Hello, my name is Moira Darrell. I'm a writer, I'm an author, and I write about family drama, friendships, relationships, and emotions. And I throw into the two books I've written as much humor as those stories will allow. And I do get totally involved in my character or people's emotions because after you've lived with them for 21, 22 months, they do feel like people. I say that everyone, when they were younger, had imaginary friends. At least I did. And apparently, I still do. So the emotions and my characters do grab me and pull me along. And that's what I want to do with my readers. I want you to be grabbed and pulled along by my story and about my characters. So I will read to you a little bit about what Selena and Her Mysteries is about. That's my first book, and it's just got two short sentences. Selena is a young woman with no answers to her family mysteries, and she must overcome heartbreaking deceit. And there's lots of twists and turns, as in every book, but there's a couple of twists in this one that you don't normally find in books. And to find her answers, Selena searches in unusual places using extraordinary travel means. So that book I started 2,000 words of 30 years before, and it traveled with me places and places. And then I did write it during the damdemic. And the one I just published a week ago, after 21, 22 months, is called Messed Up Choices. Here we go. Messed Up Choices. And of course, the back cover blurb tells you more than the few words I'm going to say. And it's about a young couple going through family turmoil. It's about Jenna and Matthew and all sorts of corresponding characters. After Matthew becomes depressed and is accused of a business crime, Jenna does not want to admit her family is in crisis. Matthew makes many disruptive choices. And the RV resort, so we're taking place first, there's Calgary, there's Portland, and then there's Palm Desert area, Palm Springs area. So the RV resort where Jenna's parents' winter is her refuge as she goes to visit them because of Matthew's disruptive choices. There are many obstacles to get through involving the crime and the couple's inner turmoil. The question is Matthew stable? So there's no similarity between the two books. No storyline continued, no characters continued. And I do go on in this back of this book to tell you all about the characters, but what I want to do right now is just sorry, when I'm reading this, you might think I'm giving away the storyline. I'm not. In Messed Up Choices, the prologue, right at the beginning, lays it out for you. It kind of starts in the middle, and then it'll go back and explain how the story was set up. So here we are, 2 years before a medical incident that I called it that because an attempted suicide is a terribly harsh and serious event. And in this story, it's tried to, and it tells the whole thing, but it wants to just, for my purposes right now, to make it a little more toned down. And the reason for that is explained in the book about the psychologist and so forth. But here we are 2 years before. So 2 years after our wedding, Matthew walked into the house and asked, "What would you think of moving to California?" California? Wow. I have a job I want to apply for in Palm Springs. Check out this posting. As he handed me the sheet of paper, he added, "It's spot on for me. I've checked. There's a job available for you if you're interested." I squealed before he was done his sales pitch. Jumping up from the couch, holding the job description, I shouted, "Yes." We danced a jig. I loved this idea. It was a typical dreary November day in Portland, and the idea of sunshine and heat thrilled me. 3 days later, we flew to Palm Springs, and I indeed became enamored with the entire Coachella Valley. Matthew's parents wouldn't be happy at all he'd be leaving Portland. At this point in our lives, our happiness was what was important to us. Of course, moving away from Clara, the mother-in-law, was going to be mentally and emotionally healthy for me. We walked off down the escalator at the Palm Springs Airport. This area led into an enclosed part of the airport, an expansive area open to the sun shining from above. I'll get my words mixed up, they're better in the book. Passengers were walking on the sidewalk to get to the exit area to pick up their luggage. We walked past dogs on leashes lazing on the lawn. Suitcases were beside benches as other passengers awaiting the next flight took a break in the sunshine prior to going up the escalator to catch their flight home, back to some much cooler climate, stalling the inevitable. Matthew, this is heaven. How could anyone not want to move here? I had stopped, mesmerized by the scenes playing out in front of me. Matthew stopped beside me, took my hand and squeezed it, obviously pleased with my response. Coming from a wet, cloudy, morose day in Portland, rain streaming from the sky and all Portland weather stations forecasting cloud for the next 10 days, this warm, well, hot day was heavenly. It does get hotter in summer. It's 90 degrees right now. That's pretty warm, but I mean really, really hot, 120 above. What do people do? I mean, I think it'd be hard to live in 120. Obviously, everyone here does. As I joked, inquiring, do they hibernate in the summer? We resumed walking, As we resumed walking, inhibited slightly as other passengers jostled past us, giving us a glance of irritation that we were slowing down their progress as they hurried to their holiday. Yeah, not hibernate. Yeah, not hibernate. In Calgary winters, you'd plan for a blizzard. You wouldn't go out at -35. You'd live your life around the cold, the snow, and dress for the weather. We had only packed a carry-on suitcase, requiring no wait time in the luggage area. Walking straight out into the day, I stopped again, taking in the clear, sunny skies and trembling with anticipation of a life here. Indeed, it's hot, but I could get used to this. The palm trees swaying, the sun on my face in November. Moving out of the way of other departing passengers, I said, so maybe shop early in the morning and late evening? We get lots of days in the 80s during the Alberta summer. It's best to get everything done when it's not, wow, 120 above. I added, with a suggestive wink at Matthew, I dress skimpily. I'll expect that. That's why I want to move here. I grinned and smacked him and then kissed him. Moving ahead, this is a point of view of other characters in the book, and this one's named Phoebe, and she is Jenna's mother, so the main character's mother, and it is again 2 years before to set the stage for the story. So Phoebe is speaking. Phoebe is the point of view. Leonard shouted to me through the open window, Phoebe, that's the last of the suitcases. He stepped in the door with Charlie, our tricolored King Charles Cavalier Spaniel, scampering behind him. As we unpacked at our Palm Estates RV Resort Park model a couple of years ago, Leonard screwed up his only slightly lined face and speculated, we forgot to pack the electric toothbrushes. I sauntered past the bathroom holding a small suitcase and muttered, Leonard, I can pretty much live without an electric toothbrush. They make my whole face vibrate. You may love them, but I'll enjoy the reprieve. Catty wife. I arranged clothing in a drawer and took a long critical scan of myself in the closet mirror, saying confidently, ah, but you love me anyway. I do, always. That made me smile and my green eyes sparkle. Then I noted in the mirror that my smile brought out all sorts of laugh lines. My hair still had some blonde intermingled with the gray, and I twisted my face to make my hair swing a little, ignoring the little jiggle of my tummy. Interrupting my mere critique, I sighed and said, "Glad we got Juanita to come in to clean. I don't relish dust everywhere when I'm on vacation." Vacation for 5 months? We're retired, dear. That would be a vacation from a vacation. Smiling again at our mutual teasing, I coyly replied, "We are retired, but you stay involved in your construction business." Smacking me on the bum as he sidled into our bedroom, squeezing past me, Leonard attempted to imitate my mocking expression and said, "Hey, Phoebe, let's get to the pool while the rest of the gang's still here. I'll take Charlie out for a wee and then we'll go." I saw Thaddy and Martha head that way before we began unpacking. The bags can wait. It's 3:30. Perfect timing. As I glanced around our winter home away from home, I thought about our 5 months ahead. "Excited," I said. "I love coming back to be with our winter friends. I miss them all summer. Aren't you happy to be back in our second home?" "God, yes, it's tiny, but it's our home as well. Our little park model is 600 square feet, including an added sunroom. Our front door opened into the living room sunroom beside the dining area. We had a two-bomb kitchen, which meant if you were friendly, two of you could prepare the meal." I sighed deeply. Standing beside me, Leonard asked, "Phoebe, is something wrong?" "No, Leonard." It's a sigh of contentment. "Good, good." Sitting in the hot tub, the resort hot tub, hours later, an evening still warm after a hot day, we were reminiscing. I said, "It's so quiet at night." I noted hardly a breath of wind through the acacia and palm trees and quiet voices in the distance of people having get-togethers on their lots. I asked Leonard dreamily, drink in hand, who would have thought all those decades ago that our daughter would marry a boy from Portland, that we would get a motorhome, come down to the Coachella Valley for an occasional holiday, and then we'd decide to buy a place and stay every winter. Moving ahead, Mrs. Jenna and the medical incident, suicide attempt has happened. So day to day, Jenna point of view. Reminiscing about the conversation this morning, I recalled telling my parents, "There is nothing you can do right now." My dad had earnestly lamented, "But we could be there for you. Your mom is checking flights out of Calgary to Palm Springs." My dad had earnestly lamented, "But we could be there for you." I believe I need to say, for all our sakes, please don't come yet. "Why, sweetie?" Mom now on the speakerphone with Dad, and Mom is Phoebe. So Jenna's mom is Phoebe, Jenna's dad is Leonard. "Mom, I don't have the mental capacity to be social right now. Matthew isn't conscious. I just need a couple of days to gather myself. I'll call you right away as soon as something changes, as soon as he wakes up. You don't need to make the effort to get here. Jenna will talk to you tonight." Tonight, what would happen during this day? Today already felt so exceedingly long. How could it have been only earlier this morning that Travis and Ashley, their children, would have gotten right into the early morning traffic after leaving our front step to head back to Los Angeles? They would have received my telephone call and in a state of panic and horror found an exit to turn around to come back to Palm Springs to meet me at the Eisenhower Hospital. My mind wandered to my talks with the children. I'd called Ashley and Travis shortly after arriving at the Eisenhower Hospital in the ambulance with Matthew unconscious, unresponsive. Bloody hell, what had he done? I gathered myself and said, "I know you can't possibly pull over to chat with me, but I need you to turn around and come back as soon as you safely can." But Mom, the morning traffic's deplorable. I have to get to class and Travis has a job waiting. What's going on? They would have had the call on speaker so they could both hear. I tried so hard to be calm, not to panic them in the midst of heavy, heavy traffic. I chose my words to them carefully. Something happened to your father. No, don't interrupt until I'm done. When I went into our bedroom, your father wouldn't wake up. The ambulance came, and I need you to meet me at the Eisenhower. What do you mean something happened? That he wouldn't wake up, Mom. Travis, trying not to yell at me. Drive safely. Don't panic. Travis, keep your attention on the road and call me back once you've turned around or in less traffic. I can't talk right now. I need to talk to the staff here. Travis called back a little over 15 minutes later, and I told them both on speaker the little that I knew. Your dad may have swallowed some pills. The staff are doing everything they can to ensure your father recovers. They tell me he received medical attention soon enough. They are very positive about the outcome. Of course, there had been discussion about my wording. May have swallowed some pills, neither of them satisfied with my explanation or the doctors being positive. Travis had had a friend who took too many drugs, and the outcome had not been positive. Ashley was crying. That's bullshit, Mom. Travis became angry, hurt. Why would our father try to off himself? He didn't accidentally take too many pills. He's an accountant, for God's sake. He can count. Travis and Ashley had arrived at the hospital at 8:30 a.m., 90 minutes after they'd left our home. Their attention would have diverted to their week ahead as soon as they were off our street. Now it's locked on their father. We stood, we sat, we stood, we paced. We asked questions of every staff member who came into the room. It had taken every bit of emotional strength I had not to beg my parents to come right away. But I had been strong. I'd told them not to come. I glanced over at my children and admired my son's tall figure, auburn hair with long sideburns. After I pressed the end button, after talking to my parents, Travis put his hand on my shoulder and Ashley leaned into me while sweeping her long red and gold hair from her face, her tears wetting my cheek and blending in with my own tears. As I set my phone down, Ashley murmured, "It would be reassuring to have Grandma and Grandpa Barnes here." So this is a later and a recall while Jenna's in the hospital with Matthew. I recalled Matthew's parents coming to the hospital the first night he was hospitalized. Clara, the mother-in-law, had been quiet, quieter than I had ever seen her. She whispered loving words to Matthew, stroking his hand gently below where the intravenous was housed. I'd never seen her like this. It pleased me to think she could be a loving mother. Jack stood stoically on the other side of Matthew, a tear running from each eye, his face a crumpled mess. I made an excuse to leave them alone for over an hour. Something in Jack's face had changed when he glanced my way, and it made me want to speak with him. Alone. Clara eventually went to the washroom, a sob escaping as she exited the room. Jack, is something else the matter besides you're worried sick about Matthew? I don't know for sure. I keep mulling over what Matthew said to me days before this happened. He usually doesn't call because Clara calls a few times a month. His huge, rugged hands were absent-mindedly rubbing together back and forth. As Jack hesitated, his booming, cynical laugh not evident in any way, he moved away from me, his eyes closing for a moment. I had a hard time being patient, but he continued. Matthew indicated some documentation had disappeared from the office. He'd neglected to return his key, and the clinic hadn't changed his code. Two terrible coincidences, but they were checking he didn't have these documents in his possession. As a former police officer, I cautioned him to get some legal advice, but Matthew changed the subject. My mind summoned up the ringing telephone the night before our family disaster. The clinic calling, then Aaron calling. Aaron's the friend. I'd told Jack about this, and he had replied, something was up. but we both know it couldn't have been anything that Matthew would have done. I should have said something to you, but Matthew wanted it kept quiet. He refused to discuss it again. He gazed at me with a remorseful expression, a tall man appearing diminished by a guilty conscience, and I immediately had said, "It's not your fault. You're a wonderful father, and you've been asked to keep a secret." Jack had looked gratefully at me, still wishing he'd pushed Matthew more at the time. Then I knew that had been the secret Matthew hadn't wanted to tell me. He hadn't wanted to relay to me the reason for those 2 telephone calls that night. Jack and I agreed the conversation had to be broached with Matthew. As we stared at each other, it seemed we were saying the same thing in our minds. When Matthew comes through this. Jack had said the problem's not over. Someone has those documents. Matthew either has been involved or became a scapegoat, having forgotten to return his key. Who knew Matthew still had his key? Looking ahead, Matthew, the husband, the one who attempted suicide, has been keeping a journal. So this is Matthew's point of view, his journal. At the session when I had relayed my meager reasoning why I attempted suicide, Jenna was devastated I had kept this from her. I know it now was just a cry for help, that I'd given up that night. Afterward, back in my hospital room with the door closed, there were recriminations. Jenna looked so darn pretty with the breeze blowing through my open window, pushing fire-colored hair across her face. Watching me, she looked pale and almost breakable, tearful. I'd assured her she needn't be anxious, and I promised not to get upset. I explained to her that I'd changed. When I asked her to tell me what she was really thinking, she'd appeared skeptical, and still she hesitated. I said, "I feel calmer after this suicide mistake." Well, shifting her stance, fidgeting with her heart necklace, she finally said, "Why wouldn't you tell me what was going on? You'd attempt to take your own life to hide from the truth, not fight for what was right." I bowed my head. Still nervous, Jenna came out with the big question. "What about the pills you were saving?" Hedging, I'd responded. Dr. G.K. said that isn't unusual, that someone would stop their meds, that I didn't want to be dependent on drugs, and that I was rebelling against the whole situation. I was making excuses again. I comprehended the words were not adequate for anything she was feeling. She just stood there gazing into my eyes, then looking away through the window at the palm trees that were leaning away during the strong Santa Ana wind. Santa Ana wind. Was she leaning away from me in her mind? I needed to get her back with my next words. I'd said I was wrong for so many reasons, for so many years. She'd snapped her face toward me, looking hopefully, and then away again, possibly contemplating how she felt. And then she touched my fingers with her fingers, moving her body close to mine as we stood there. Not a hug, but bodies just touching. Nervously, I took her hand, grabbing my hand with her other hand, and peering up at me. I let out a massive breath that I'd been holding for several moments. Her arms snaked around my neck. "Let's move forward," she'd whispered. Jenna seemed so hopeful. I wanted so badly for this to be our new beginning. I wanted so badly to be who she wanted me to be. But could I pull it off? Moving ahead, stuff happens. Again, Matthew's journal. And there has been things happening. Along with the menacing calls, we were receiving hang-ups. No words spoken. It felt eerie. Jenna and I went to visit both our neighbors, sensing it important to explain our dilemma to them and to show we were in this situation jointly. I'll just go through one neighbor. Kathy and Todd had been briefed months ago about my being suspected of the file theft and blackmail. Todd had been supportive at that time and quite expressive. What the hell are they thinking that you could do such a thing? You've worked there for 25 years. Those blanks, making you the culprit instead of finding the real bastard. I'd make them pay. Today we were at their front door to advise them of the scope of the hang-ups and menacing telephone calls. Their their American flag hung limply at their doorway. The wind had died down from earlier this morning. Several juniper trees had recently been watered with droplets still hanging from the needles. We wanted our neighbors to be aware so they could keep themselves safe in case there was someone coming onto our streets to snoop or to do harm, and might unwittingly harm our neighbors, but also ask them to keep an eye on our property. I originally thought I'd simply write notes for this journal. Months ago, I had to start typing my thoughts because the written journal had expanded. My manuscript for a book was going nicely. This is how today's visits went. We've been isolated. I do not feel I can trust Aaron. At least we have Todd and Kathy for support. Kathy was annoyed. For goodness sake, why don't they just let the investigators do their job? We'll watch for anyone who doesn't belong. We'll call the police immediately and let you know. Come in for a cup of tea or something stronger. Jenna said we need to tell the new neighbors on the other side, Patty and Kim Nguyen, what's happening as well. I hope they're not sorry they bought on this street last fall. Come back and tell us how that went. A nod from Jenna, feeling relieved at their invitation. We agreed to come back. One down, one to go. It goes through the second neighbor, same kind of thing. They go back to Kathy and Todd's. Standing in the kitchen at Kathy and Todd's eating finger foods, it was a relief to have that explanation over with. To finding the creep that's ruining your lives, said Todd. I'll drink to that, was my easy reply, and this is Matthew, tossing back a glance of sangria Todd had poured. Jenna sipped hers as she watched me. I think she knows that I've started drinking again. I've never been good with stress. This was getting to be too much for me. Just a quick gulp here and there, straight from the bottle under my bathroom sink. I'm sure she'll find that one. I needed to get a gun for protection. But from where? I knew there was a 10-day waiting period before I could get it. I wanted it right away. Who did I know who could help me? Certainly not Aaron. I'd been watching him. He seemed cagier as the days went by. I needed a gun from someone. Again, lots going on. Lots going on in between my readings. This is summer, and this is called A New Beginning. Jenna is the point of view. Jenna is telling. When Matthew and I went to see Dr. G.K., Dr. Gerstein Krause, by the way, Dr. G.K., I was concerned he would resent my making an appointment and him having to attend. I was well aware he hadn't been receptive to past appointments made for him. Matthew had been quiet on the drive home. At the end of the appointment, all seemed good. He had appeared very supportive, and we hugged as he murmured for my ears only, "This is our new beginning." Since then he hadn't uttered one word. I let him have his silence. He was quiet until we closed the front door of our home. The door had clicked shut behind me as I turned around to face my husband. He grabbed me and we embraced. I was crying, he was crying. Real tears. Jenna, I do respect you. You're my everything. You've always been my everything. At this point, I couldn't stand. I made it to the sofa only with the help of Matthew. He sat beside me as I curled myself forward, head in my hands, and cried. Through aching sobs, I said, "You were always my everything. I lost you for 2 years. I was lost." And as you can see, there's a lot of pages here. And I will read Jenna, point of view, and it's called What the Hell? I'd glance sideways at Matthew lying still beside me and wonder if we should talk. How is he doing? How is he doing mentally? He said he wouldn't drink. He told Dr. GK and me that. Can he keep that promise? I struggled up beside him as he turned over and faced me, both our sets of eyes wide open. I could see him from the light streaming through the heavy half-open blinds. He looked shell-shocked, as I probably also looked. I started to say something to him, and he moved his hand and put his index finger straight up in front of my lips, touching them. Shh, don't talk, just rest. We might not get any sleep, but I don't want to talk about it until morning. Laying my head on top of his shoulder, he wrapped his other arm around me, and we stayed like that. I attempted to do as he asked. I attempted to rest. I attempted to be calm. In my head, my mind was frantic that we'd made a wrong choice. My mind shouting at me, tell the police. Don't tell the police. Tell the police. Don't tell the police. The police will know about the news release. I repeated, don't tell, don't tell. And as I'm going through pages, if I read more, then you'd know too much. So the parts I read do not tell you, they do not take away from the story. So read, move it here, just want to get the other one. So read Messed Up Choices by Moira Darrell, and you can go back and look at my other video on YouTube, and you can read Selena and Her Mysteries. And on the back again is a longer version of what I read. So thank you. And this is Moira Darrell. Thank you.